What if everything you've been told about swollen legs and poor circulation is completely wrong? In the United States, over 40 million Americans suffer from chronic leg swelling, spending an estimated $12 billion annually on treatments that barely scratch the surface of the real problem. But this story isn't about another expensive medication or surgical procedure. This is about a discovery so simple, so obvious, that when Dr. Michael Greger saw the before and after scans of one patient's legs after just 10 days, his reaction was absolutely priceless. The patient we're about to discuss represents millions of Americans trapped in a cycle of ineffective treatments. For 3 years, this 58-year-old construction worker from Ohio had been battling severe leg swelling that made it impossible for him to work. His medical journey reads like a horror story of modern healthcare. 7 different doctors, for types of diuretic medications, 2 cardiac evaluations, 1 kidney function test, and over $15,000 in medical bills. Each specialist had a different theory. The cardiologist blamed his heart. The nephrologist suspected kidney disease. The vascular surgeon recommended compression stockings and elevation. Yet nothing worked. What makes this case particularly disturbing is how common it has become. According to the American Heart Association, peripheral edema affects nearly 1 in 4 Americans over 50. But here's the shocking part. When researchers compared these numbers to countries with traditional diets, they found rates that were 300% lower. This wasn't about genetics or aging. This was about something fundamentally wrong with how Americans live and eat. The breakthrough came when this patient stumbled upon research that connected his symptoms to something no doctor had ever mentioned: vitamin B1 deficiency. In the 1970s, when the American diet underwent a massive transformation toward processed foods, something sinister began happening to our nutritional status. Food manufacturers started stripping natural vitamins from grains, then adding synthetic versions back in insufficient quantities. The result was a hidden epidemic of thiamine deficiency that would take decades to fully understand. Dr. Derek Lonsdale, one of the world's leading experts on thiamine deficiency, published research showing that the modern American diet creates a perfect storm for B1 depletion. Every gram of refined sugar consumed requires thiamine to be metabolized properly. When people eat sugar without adequate B1, the body is forced to rob this vitamin from other tissues, particularly the nervous system and cardiovascular system. The consequences are devastating: impaired circulation, fluid retention, and eventually, the swollen legs that plague millions of Americans. The science behind this discovery is both elegant and terrifying. Inside every cell in the human body are tiny molecular pumps called sodium-potassium pumps. These pumps use an enormous amount of cellular energy, consuming up to 40% of all the energy produced by each cell. Their job is critical: moving fluid in and out of cells, maintaining proper blood pressure, and ensuring optimal circulation. When these pumps fail, fluid accumulates outside the cells, creating the swelling we see in legs and ankles. But here's what most doctors don't realize: these pumps are entirely dependent on adequate thiamine levels. Vitamin B1 is not just involved in energy production. It's the master regulator of carbohydrate metabolism. Without sufficient B1, the body cannot properly process sugars and starches, leading to a condition called glycation, where sugar molecules literally stick to proteins in the blood. This process is irreversible and creates a cascade of circulatory problems. The patient from Ohio decided to take matters into his own hands. After reading about thiamine deficiency, he began supplementing with 100 milligrams of vitamin B1 daily, along with magnesium and potassium to support cellular function. He also eliminated all processed foods from his diet, focusing on whole foods rich in natural thiamine. What happened next defied everything his doctors had told him about his chronic condition. Day 3, the constant aching in his legs began to subside. Day 5, he noticed he could walk upstairs without the usual heaviness. Day 7, his work boots, which hadn't fit properly in months, were suddenly loose around his ankles. By day 10, the transformation was so dramatic that his wife insisted he return to his doctor for new tests. The ultrasound images told the story better than any words could. Where once there had been sluggish blood flow and significant fluid accumulation, the scans now showed robust circulation throughout his lower extremities. The technician performing the test called over a colleague to verify the results. They had never seen such rapid improvement in vascular function without surgical intervention. When Dr. Michael Greger, the renowned physician and author of How Not to Die, reviewed these scans during a medical conference, his reaction was captured on video. His eyebrows shot up, he leaned back in his chair, and he said, "This is exactly what we should expect to see when we address nutritional deficiencies, but I've never seen results this dramatic this quickly." He paused, then added with a wry smile, "This patient just saved himself years of medical bills and probably added decades to his life with a vitamin that costs about 50 cents per month." Dr. Greger's reaction highlighted an uncomfortable truth about American medicine. The solutions to many of our most common health problems are often sitting right in front of us, but they're not profitable enough to warrant serious attention. The global thiamine supplement market is worth about $300 million annually. Compare that to the $50 billion market for cardiovascular medications, and you begin to understand why vitamin deficiencies remain in the shadows of medical education. But the implications go far beyond one patient's success story. Research from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey reveals that nearly 80% of Americans consume insufficient amounts of thiamine, particularly those with diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and cardiovascular disease. The groups most likely to develop leg swelling are the same groups most likely to be thiamine deficient. This isn't a coincidence. The standard American diet, heavy in processed foods and refined carbohydrates, creates a perfect storm for B1 depletion. A single can of soda requires approximately 1 milligram of thiamine to be properly metabolized. The recommended daily allowance for thiamine is only 1.2 milligrams for men and 1.1 milligrams for women. Do the math, and you realize that just a few servings of processed foods can create a functional deficiency, even in people who think they're eating adequately. What makes this discovery even more significant is how it exposes the limitations of symptom-based medicine. The Ohio patient had been treated for heart failure, kidney dysfunction, and vascular disease, when the root cause was a simple nutritional deficiency. His doctors had focused on managing symptoms rather than investigating fundamental metabolic needs. The transformation in his case wasn't just physical. His energy levels increased dramatically, his sleep improved, and his mental clarity returned. These improvements make perfect sense when you understand that thiamine is essential for proper nervous system function. Without adequate B1, the brain and peripheral nerves cannot function optimally, leading to fatigue, brain fog, and the peripheral neuropathy that often accompanies leg swelling. For Americans struggling with similar symptoms, the lessons from this case are clear but require careful implementation. First, identify the signs of thiamine deficiency: persistent fatigue, leg swelling, tingling in hands or feet, poor concentration, and difficulty losing weight despite dietary efforts. Second, eliminate or drastically reduce refined carbohydrates, particularly sugary drinks, processed cereals, and white flour products. Third, focus on thiamine-rich whole foods, sunflower seeds, nutritional yeast, pork, black beans, and fortified whole grains. However, supplementation is often necessary to reverse existing deficiency. High-quality thiamine supplements are widely available and remarkably affordable. The most bioavailable form is benfotiamine, which crosses cell membranes more easily than standard thiamine hydrochloride. The protocol that worked for the Ohio patient involved 100 milligrams of benfotiamine daily, taken with meals to improve absorption. He also added 400 milligrams of magnesium and ensured adequate potassium intake through diet, as these minerals are essential cofactors for proper cellular pump function. This combination costs less than $20 per month, a fraction of what he had been spending on prescription diuretics. But perhaps the most important lesson from this case is the need for medical advocacy. The patient's doctors weren't negligent. They were following standard protocols that focus on managing symptoms rather than investigating nutritional foundations. Patients must be willing to ask uncomfortable questions. Could this be related to nutrition? Have my vitamin levels been tested? What would happen if we tried addressing deficiencies before adding more medications? The broader implications for American health are staggering. If even a fraction of the 40 million Americans with circulation problems have undiagnosed thiamine deficiency, we're looking at a public health crisis hiding in plain sight. The economic impact alone is enormous. Billions spent on medications and procedures that address symptoms while the underlying cause remains untreated. Dr. Greger's reaction to those scan results wasn't just professional surprise. It was recognition of how far modern medicine has drifted from its foundational principle of, first, do no harm. By failing to investigate basic nutritional status, the medical system had allowed a simple deficiency to progress to the point where it significantly impacted this patient's quality of life and earning capacity. The story doesn't end with one patient's recovery. Word of his transformation spread through his community, leading several neighbors to investigate their own nutritional status. 3 others discovered similar deficiencies and experienced comparable improvements. One elderly woman who had been using a walker due to leg swelling was able to return to her daily walks within 2 weeks of beginning thiamine supplementation. This grassroots discovery highlights an important truth. Sometimes the most powerful medicine comes not from pharmaceutical laboratories, but from understanding the basic nutritional needs that evolution has programmed into our bodies. The human metabolism has evolved over millions of years to function optimally with specific nutrients. When we disrupt the system with processed foods and synthetic additives, we create problems that can only be solved by returning to fundamental biological principles. For the construction worker from Ohio, the solution was life-changing not just physically, but financially and emotionally. He returned to work within 3 weeks, regained his confidence, and became an advocate for nutritional awareness in his community. Most importantly, he learned that taking control of his health didn't require surrendering his autonomy to a medical system that treats symptoms rather than causes. The lesson for every American is clear. Before accepting a lifetime of medication for chronic conditions like leg swelling, investigate the nutritional foundations of health. The solution might be as simple as a vitamin that costs less than a cup of coffee, and the results might be priceless enough to surprise even the most experienced medical professionals. Dr. Greger's reaction to those scan results will remain a reminder that medicine at its best is about discovery, not just treatment. And sometimes, the most profound discoveries come from patients brave enough to question the status quo and investigate solutions that the medical establishment has overlooked.